How good was that? Well, final thoughts. Now, the thing is, with the whole Let's Play thing, a little bit of inside baseball, a bit of business. I'm probably going to stay more with the completed playthroughs. I'm going to try and keep pace up on the channel, but I've started full-time work back again, contracting in real life, yet I still want to do my channel full-time because I'm a psychopath. So, you know, we had a little bit of a flirt there where we opened up and started drifting back towards playing lots of different games. But the idea of trying to clock through a game a week, or at least introduce a game to the channel each week and get as far as we can, and eventually clock it, is something I want to do. I enjoyed doing that with Alien Dark Descent, and I love doing it with this game. So I just thought I'd put that there. I'm open to suggestions and thoughts, but realistically, this is what we'll do. I'll do a little debrief here, but I need to think about if I'm going to like do a review or something, and maybe, I mean, do I put that on the second channel? I don't really know. I'm not a reviewer. I'm not interested in writing a script. Maybe I just do this little bit on the end that we're doing right now, and that will suffice. I'm not sure. I have to think about it. Anyway, so thoughts? How brilliant was this game? This was really, really good. And, you know, if you've been around the channel for a while, you will know that I am incredibly jaded, for lack of a better term, edgy as that is, when it comes to Telltale-esque, narrative-heavy, and dare I say, walking sim sort of games. Generally speaking, I see the genesis of a lot of narrative-heavy walking sim types in current gaming, and for the past few years, to be a shortcut. A lot of it, most of the time, is a delivery system for a shitty script, for someone who calls themselves a writer before they call themselves a gamer. And we've talked about this before. The classic games from 10, 20 years ago, the writers come from the staff. They're people like you and me that are interested in making games and being part of it, and they put their hand up and they end up writing. These days, it's people that come with writing degrees from a university or from a different discipline, but my point is they're not us a lot of the time. Most writers in current day take themselves seriously as a writer, and the gaming thing happens to be a stepping stone in their career. So why am I saying all this? Well, because I found walking sims, generally speaking, and this isn't necessarily a walking sim, but we'll call it gameplay light, but the king's share of them are usually pretty piss weak when it comes to story gameplay, right? And a lot of them I saw as, instead of going to the effort of making an immersive sim, which is one of the most robust and difficult genres to build as a game, very rewarding, but usually they're financially not viable either, but that's another whole story. You came up with a walking sim, which is essentially if you take an immersive sim and you pull all the gameplay out of it. And then, so what we end up with is these hack writers that have no business being writing in the gaming space, having to ship a game, and the game is just, like I said, a delivery system for their crappy story. So you end up with this average story from someone that doesn't care about gaming, and just some B-grade gameplay, you know, to get them through. And that's, you know, when people actually unironically became proud of making a walking sim, they didn't actually realize what a meme they were. So enter something like this. And again, I'm a jaded little boy that is just over a lot of modern writing, and this was brilliant. This was so good. Now, obviously, it was narrative first and gameplay second. What gameplay was light, all right? This thing's not going to break the bank, and the only times that it really challenged us when it was sort of buckling under its own strength, right? Where they started sending billions of dudes at us, and then the stealth systems became a bit indecipherable as to where I was supposed to go, you know? Reference, I ended up in a room that I wasn't supposed to be in, you know? That sort of thing. So, like, I would never say it was really difficult. It doesn't have to be difficult. I would say it was enough challenge. I'm not critical of that. I think, honestly, the gameplay worked. And I would even go so far as to say, if you fancy yourself as a game dev or someone that wants to make a video game narrative first and gameplay second, learn from this. I think this strikes the happy medium. This was the middle ground that I think is acceptable to someone like me that wants a good story, if you're going to give us a story, and enough gameplay to keep us engaged, right? And do not follow suit of the crappy hack stuff that we covered before, of the narrative that honestly we've become accustomed to accepting in current day. So potentially this sort of thing could herald a new age of walking sims or gameplay lights or narrative heavies or whatever you would like to call them. If you want to make more like this, I'm keen. I think as a genre, this is how to do it. So maybe we could even argue there were growing pains in the space, but this is the correct recipe. Now, obviously this came out on Epic Games Store to not very much fanfare at all. I didn't see much coverage. I had to kind of go out of my way to look into it and pick it up myself. So it's not on Steam. Maybe it comes to Steam one day in the future. Maybe you watch this in the future if it does, in which case, hello. I can only hope that this small studio that's clearly had to wrangle the Star Trek IP, that couldn't have been cheap. They put a lot of work, they put a lot of budget. There's a lot riding in here. This strikes me as a very risky project. The hope is Epic, as much as I think it's popular from idiots to think Epic is bad, I think Epic can be good, especially in this situation where the game is fairly, I would say, quite high budget as far as things go on Star Trek properties, and the work that went into this is a really top-notch project that probably costs a lot. And by going on Epic Store, I think they probably made a tactical decision that something like this, a Telltale-like Star Trek that's more next-gen than current Discovery New Trek crap, was never going to find anything more than a niche market anyway. So in order to put this much money into something that was probably going to be hobbled out the gate, going to Epic and taking, you know, some walking around money to actually fund the project and potentially make you come out black in the book so you can make another one, I think this is probably a really clever industry maneuver. However, this is all speculation. While I work alongside the industry a lot of the time and, you know, I have my contacts, I am speculating here. So the hope is, in my heart of hearts, that this finds whatever metric it needs to for the studio to greenlight a season 2 or perhaps another IP altogether. But I would love to see them do both, either or. But imagine carrying forward, and if they could in some way write canon the characters that you kept from your bridge into another adventure. Now that would be a big ask. That'd be a lot of work, because there's crew that have died or resigned or whatever. Then you'd potentially have to voice act entire characters that wouldn't be there and their replacements. So, you know, but it's cool to dream like this. This is the sort of thing that you would think about back in the Mass Effect days. I drew a lot of comparisons to this to Mass Effect, obviously not gameplay wise, but as far as the narrative tenor, that sci-fi, I don't want to say utopic, but it is much more, well, it's much more like Next Generation than it is all this modern, gritty, miserable, dystopic, everyone's grey kind of modern writing that you see. I don't mind it in small doses. I don't love that we're living in an era where that's all there is. So, not to waffle and get ahead of myself, my hope is that they did exactly what I've speculated, and they played the market, the system, the funding and such, that they have been a success on the books. It'd be hard to know otherwise. In which case, I wish this studio well, and I hope they do this again. Either a sequel or something new, but whatever they release, I will play the next thing. I will be so keen. So look, I haven't talked about the game specifically. I've just talked in broad strokes, but if you followed the playthrough, you know full well that I loved every second of it. Yes, a lot of nostalgia involved. I'm not a nostalgic guy, but my God, they did justice to what I would say more the Next Generation, but obviously the spirit of the original series in there as well. It did get a bit grim and dark and body count heavy towards the end, sort of much like a Next Generation movie, which obviously aren't the strongest parts. They're a little bit indulgent, you know, but they're not the strongest parts of Next Generation and what we remember it for. But at the same time, it's not like you can make 30-minute episodes and ask for the same entry price as well. Like, what are you going to do, a season of 20 different mini stories and ask people for $80? That wouldn't be a reasonable thing. So I think they did their best with what they had. It didn't outstay its welcome or anything like that, but like I said, it went on that predictable bombastic finale path. So yeah, as I continue to rant like this, I realize this is turning into a second video, so I might chop this out and make it its own thing. So I don't want to speak on spoilers, but I will just say broadly that the way that they decided to resolve one of the main conflicts involving the, well, I don't want to say assimilation, because that might even be too much, but that's the closest thing. It's not Borg, obviously, but those who know, but there is this sort of, this infection component to it, and I was speculating how they would resolve it throughout the playthrough, and, you know, to my actual, like, I predicted it's going to go one way or another, and I'm surprised that they went with what they went with, to be honest, and at the same, good for them. So I think some bold moves were made, and it never sold itself out or short. It was never too predictable, but yeah, I think it really stuck the landing and nailed it. Obviously, the weakest part with some of the hiccups with like performance, the engine had some serious problems performing. I don't know how much of that is the PC port. I've heard the console version is maybe capped at 30 frames and runs better, but not to say that I've accepted it, but it is one of those things. These Telltale-esque games usually are plagued by a crappy engine, and I don't know why, right? But at the same time, the narrative was so strong, and the gameplay moments, while light, were engaging enough that, and you know, 90% of the time it was kicking goals. I honestly, personally, can overlook a lot of the performance issues that we encountered. Anyway, that pretty much covers it off for me. Yeah, broadly, without going into specifics, I thought this was brilliant. Will it convert people that aren't Trekkie? Well, yeah, see, here's the thing. If you're a younger audience and you never watched the Next Generation, not to sound like an old boomer type, even though I'm not, and you think, oh God, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how you've made it through this video, but if you're someone that thinks that Star Trek Discovery is a value add to current pop culture and sci-fi in general, I don't know how to help you. You try this game, but you probably won't like it if you think that that's good. But I would encourage you to try it in the hope that it could convert you and turn you around and make you realize there's so much better Star Trek. But yeah, I think the crowning achievement of this game is that it did the impossible, and it has revived the Next Generation in modernity, albeit through a video game front end. I know people talk about Picard Season 3. I watched it. It was okay. Honestly, I think people should not be so quick to just be bait and switched by member berries. At the end of the day, they just wheeled out a bunch of 70-year-old geriatrics, no offense to the original crew, and it's all just nostalgia bait, right? But that doesn't indicate that the producers and writers learnt anything. All they learnt was that they were getting destroyed in reviews and critical response, and people hated the Star Trek they were putting out, so they just copy-pasted, literally, with the original cast, what they had done before. So yeah, nostalgia-wise, it hit all the marks. But what are they going to do? They're going to bring the 71-year-olds out for the next season? Or are they actually going to learn to write? And both of those sound unlikely. So Picard Season 3, I understand why people liked it, but to me, it doesn't fix anything. This here, and I remarked, whoever wrote this, the writing staff in this, give them more Star Trek. Give them more opportunities to play with the IP. Throw money at them. God, radical as it might be, get the writers from this to write for new Star Trek, and maybe they can write the ship. Who knows? But that's another whole story. Anyway, so my point is, if you have lost faith in Star Trek, tragically there's a chance that you would never have played this. But maybe you have friends that you know, you're listening to me and you're converted, and you have friends that are jaded and they miss what Star Trek was. I would recommend that you recommend this to them, because this is actually brilliant. Anyway, I'll chop this off into another video, and I don't know, maybe just sort of a Scarlet Rants review or something. We'll work it out. Team, thanks again for joining me. Might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.